mean, has anybody else got Mrs. Gooch on this
Nothing
business of
further to
mediation?
add, thank you.
Councillor Powell? Councillor Mackay or Harper? No. Thank you. I've received notification that Mr. Dave Witcher wishes to ask a question of the Leader of the Council. Yes, we've only got 10 minutes left, so if you could restrict yourself to your question, we'd be grateful, because then other people will get their questions discussed as well. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen. The question is as follows. Anyone who is taken to court for an alleged debt would expect to receive an original court sealed and signed liability order from a magistrate's court and not just a notification sent from the council. It goes without saying...
Excuse me, Mr. Witcher, I said, would you please restrict yourself to a question like other people have done?
This is the
Just come no, have done.
This is the
Just come no, you have not. You've been making a statement so far. Would you please ask your question, because you're stealing time from other people?
Well, this question I've got written down in front of me, so, you know, am I allowed to ask? It's just a full question, sir. Is that too loud? Sorry.
Can you just summarise and go to the rest of the question?
It is a question.
No, it's not been a statement so far, but please continue and be brief.
Mr. Mayor, point of order. I really think you ought to also add a minute that this questioner has lost, because it is quite clear that in the past we've had some very lengthy questions. No one has ever attempted to stop the questioner reading.
I'm just conscious of the time left to other members of the public who wish to speak.
I would like to add, sir, I am not familiar with... I'm just a man of the people, and I do think my voice needs to be heard. It's on my understanding that this is just a question. Okay. It goes without saying that this matter clearly affects an increasing number of people who are becoming aware that a transparent due process operating between the council and the magistrates' court does not appear to exist, resembling an in-house system. When one approaches the council, they are directed to the magistrates' court for the liability order and vice versa. Nor do the civil procedure rules seem to apply. Yet the criminal procedure rules are applied in their place to obtain an uncourt sealed summons by the court when in fact a civil matter, not a criminal matter. The summons are also not sealed by the magistrates' court. Is the council aware that Section 3 of the Council Tax Administration and Enforcement Act states the following: the amount in respect of which a liability order is made is enforceable in accordance with this part, and accordingly, for the purpose of any of the provisions of Part 3 of the Magistrates' Court Act of 1980, it is not to be treated as a sum adjudged to be paid by court of the order. Does the council have a transparency policy on council tax enforcement, and do they follow due process to obtain and provide a properly constituted magistrates' court sealed liability order for the people who the council allege owe council tax, and is the sum adjudged to by the order of the magistrates' court? Thank you for your forthcoming participation in this debate and obtaining transparency of due process in the name of what is equitable, fair, just and right. Thank you for your time.
Councillor Mrs. Blackmore.
Thank you, Mr.
Can you
Mayor.
turn your microphone off, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Witcher. And don't worry that you didn't know the procedures. This can be a nightmare of a chamber sometimes. Council tax enforcement is covered under legislation. Therefore, the council does not actually need a policy per se, purely because the legislation itself is transparent. Now, as a general rule, council policies are transparent to make it as easy as possible for members of the public. When you've got a summons an individual has to attend the magistrate's court before a decision to grant a liability order occurs. There is actually no requirement in law for the council to provide a magistrate's order as a sealed entity. The council can, however, produce a copy of the liability order if that's appropriate and deemed necessary.
Thank you, Mrs. Blackmore. Councillor Mrs. Wilson.
Well, of course, this is a highly technical question, and both Councillor Blackmore and myself did seek advice to see what the borough is obliged to do. And I'm not going to add to anything Councillor Blackmore has said. However, what I will say is that the question leads me to wonder whether there's anything more the council could do to actually make processes transparent so that the average citizen can easily understand it. I'm not suggesting that we should, obviously we can't change legislation, but I do sometimes wonder whether in the way we handle things we miss a trick in the way that we can actually make things easily understood. So all I'm going to say is that I'm going to ask Councillor Blackmore if she and I can take a look at that and see if there is anything we can do to make it more easily understood.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Wilson. Councillor Mrs. Gooch.
Thank you. Well said, Councillor Wilson, actually, because I was on the verge of suggesting that a copy of the regulations is sent to you so that, you know, you can see it. But I rather suspect it will be far too technical and wordy. I probably wouldn't understand it. But I certainly support what my predecessors have said.
Thank you, Mrs. Gooch. Councillor Powell.
Mr. Witcher, I think that was an absolutely excellent question, and I think it's something that deserves to be looked at, and thank you very much for bringing that to the Chamber tonight. What I would say, though, is transparency is so important. You're the second person tonight that's mentioned transparency. Council tax at the moment, if it's not paid, is treated as a criminal offence. Personally speaking, I think it should be treated as a civil offence as opposed to criminal. Why people should actually kind of get locked up for that and not for something else, I really, really don't know. So that is all I've got to say on that, and I'm delighted that the two ladies mentioned tonight they're going to take this further, and let's hope they get the answer that you're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Witcher. I won't pretend to understand your question, nor the detailed response I got from council officers. I know that Revenue and Benefits from Maidstone Borough Council are proud of their collection rates. I hope that's not at the expense of best practice, and I concur with the leader of the opposition. We need transparency in this, and I think it's an area I need to look more into. I'm not saying I agree with you or disagree with you, but thank you for bringing it forward.
Mr. Witcher, do you have a supplementary question?
No further questions.
Thank you very much.